Well, thank you for joining me. Many of you are probably watching this or viewing this on a Friday afternoon, maybe a Saturday, but this is our Take 5 segment. We take 5 minutes out of your day, give you a preview of what we'll be discussing on the Sunday that is coming up. So the Sunday I'm referring to is March 5th. We hope that you'll join us in person at 10 o'clock at 1895 State Road 44, Martinsville, Indiana, at Faith Church. If not, you can always get our teaching on our YouTube channel, either through our Facebook page or just go directly to our YouTube channel, Faith Church Martinsville. So, well, what are we going to be looking at? Well, we've taken a couple weeks break, and it's not because we haven't been meeting, at 10 o'clock on Sundays, but we've been taking a bit of a break from our teaching series on the letter to the Philippians. We had some business that we had to talk about in one of our services. We had some baptisms, we had a communion service, all these different things. And so just maybe a shout out that if you could ever attend in person, we would love for you to be able to meet you and worship with you in person at 10 o'clock. Sometimes a video of teaching is sufficient where it's necessary, if that's all you can do, but obviously we'd love to have you there in person, right? But what are we going to be doing? We're jumping back right head on into the last part of chapter 2 in this incredible letter to the Philippian church, written by the Apostle Paul, a guy who was in prison in Rome awaiting really a trial that's going to either seal his fate or set him free. He's been talking about how the Lord has been faithful in the past, how he can see the Lord's hand through all kinds of what we would probably call very difficult or dire situations, and yet God used it in incredible ways to bring the gospel message of Jesus to people who probably would have never heard it before. And so Paul is confident that God has worked in his past. He's also going to be confident in his present situations that no matter what happens, whether he's released or whether he is sentenced to death, that God is going to use it for his glory. And then also Paul talks about his future, that no matter what the future has in store, whether he's absent from the body or present with the Lord has a plan. And not everything just falls on Paul's shoulders. Paul understands that he is not the main character in his story, but Christ is. And so he knows that someone will come after him and pick up that mantle of the gospel, right? And so Paul has complete confidence in the Lord. And as he's writing this very short letter to a church that he loves, he is conveying this confidence to this church, which is a very good church. If you look at some of the themes of the letter to the Philippian church, it's about joy. It's about how to live the Christian life, the outlook that we ought to have. It's not a corrective letter in terms of behavior like 1 Corinthians or in terms of belief like the letter to the Galatians. It's essentially, this is how you ought to think and this is how you ought to act. It's an amazing letter of encouragement. It's a thank you note in many ways. And yet, a good portion of this letter has to do with how we conduct ourselves in personal relationships and personal friendships. That is a theme that is so important to the heart of the Apostle Paul. And the reason why is because it was so important to the heart of Christ. In fact, right before Christ went to the cross, his last recorded prayer for those who would believe in the apostles' message, and that would be us, by the way, was that we would be one. And he gives us this command, or he gives us this statement where he says, this is how people will know that you are my disciples, by the way that you love one another. In fact, when Jesus was also asked, what is the greatest commandment? How did Jesus answer that? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. There is always this link in our vertical heavenly relationship with our Father, with our Creator, and also the connections in our relationships. The vertical impacts the horizontal relationships, and the horizontal relationships impacts our vertical relationships. So it just makes sense that a good portion of the letter of Philippians has to do with personal relationships. And in chapter 2, as we've been discussing for the last couple months, two and a half months, however long it's been, there are these models of how we should function. And the first model is Jesus. He's the perfect model. The second model is the Apostle Paul, how everything that Paul does is a reflection of Jesus and how he wants to model him. couple weeks ago, we talked about a guy by the name of Timothy. Paul's writing this recommendation letter basically for him that Timothy is going to be sent to the people of Philippi and how they should receive him because he's an extension of him. And then this last guy that we're going to talk about actually on this Sunday, on the 5th of March coming up. A guy by the name of Epaphroditus. He's not mentioned anywhere else in the scripture, only in the book of Philippians twice, once in chapter 2 and then again in chapter 4. He is the bearer of this letter. He came and he visited Paul, almost died because of a sickness and an illness. He received this letter that we know as Philippians, and he goes back to the city of Philippi. So he's this messenger, this bearer of this message. And yet he was an incredible friend. And so we're going to look at a profile of him on Sunday. What does it mean to be a good and yet imperfect friend? Well, the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you strength. We hope to see you Sunday at 10 o'clock. Goodbye.